What killed your interest in a hobby? Don't have a specific answer, but when someone is new to a hobby and the veterans act like the noob needs to earn their way into the discussion, or should already know things, that kills interest quick. Happens in the workplace too. Fuck that. I'm a bowler. I'm always answering questions people ask me, especially my friends. They find it fascinating I bowl for some reason. Veterans have to teach the new guys, because that's how they get better. I've even given some of my old equipment to people to help with the costs. I used to make cheese and cured meats, like cheddar and prosciutto etc. I have a basement cheese cave, a curing chamber, humidifiers, dehumidifiers, temp controls, all of that. I used to enjoy making it, aging it for months, then sharing at a big dinner party or something. Then people started, like, expecting me to make it, and would get pouty if I didn't share. Hey, sorry, that small gouda is $25 in ingredients and 9 months aging. I'm not giving it away. I want to save it for myself this time. Then someone close to me said I could give them the homemade stuff and go buy my own cheese from the store if I wanted more for myself. And I'm out. All the fun and joy of the process is gone. So I've found new hobbies that are 100% mine alone. I feel like if you started making the cheeses and meats again and kept it close to your chest, then your passion would be reignited. Just don't tell anybody you're back into it and keep all the delicious treats for yourself. Music production. My godparents pushed me to sell my music as much as possible despite the fact I only had a few years under my belt and wasn't really good at it yet. It stopped being a fun hobby of producing crazy things and uploading them to show my friends and became an unrewarding process of starting a project and scrapping it when I knew it wasn't even worth the dollar. I was getting into whitewater kayaking and none of my friends or family had any interest in it. For obvious reasons, it is dangerous to kayak near alone. The people involved in kayaking clubs are the weirdest, most uncomfortable, strange power trip, passive aggressive people I ever met in my life. And I tried a few different groups. Plenty of nice people, but the group dynamics were awful. I guess it wasn't meant to be. I was really into comics growing up. Probably 15 years or so. Then they started constantly restarting the universe, restarting the title, and doing major events that required massive tie-ins. It just got to the point where you could not just read a fluid, consistent story about a character or team for longer than like 4 months. I used to do community theater in a small town. Just a lark really, but there was some real talent. A group of us would put together a show every couple of months, often well received by audience members. Soon some of the actors and crew started to think they were something really special. Egos grew out of control. There was talk of my art as an actor. People took themselves way too seriously. Took all the fun out of the whole thing. I burned out on GTA Online because of a friend that was obsessed with it. I'd get game invites if I was playing something else or watching Netflix. If we did play, he'd spend up to an hour trying to exploit glitches to get more money and maybe 2 or 3 missions afterward. I play video games to relax in my off time and he turned it into a second job. I ended up getting a PS4 and promptly refused to get PlayStation Plus to avoid online entirely. I have had experiences like that. When Destiny first came out, I was still active duty in the military and my friend, who was also my roommate, really wanted to play together. He gets us both the game 2 days before I have to go on a 3-week field opus. When I come back, he had spent the whole time leveling up and finding exploits. When I started with him, all he did was teach me shortcuts, and it ruined the experience for me. I had no time to get engaged in the game itself. Instead, he was walking me through at a sprinter's pace. I never felt like playing that game again. I used to collect obsolete paper currency, including Confederate money. But every collector of Confederate money that I met was a racist who seemed to be collecting the money in hopes that the Confederacy would rise again. Kind of turned me off from that part of the hobby. When I was younger, I was super into Magic the Gathering. Never went to any tournaments or anything, just played with my friends. Once one of my friends started stealing cards and others started arguing about rules and how certain cards' abilities were supposed to be played, it really killed it for me. I was 5 years into learning French when I learned the French word for yogurt. It's yogurt, which made my brain tell itself the joke that it sounds like saying yogurt with yogurt in your mouth. Then it occurred to me that all French just sounds like you're speaking any other language with yogurt in your mouth, and I never learned another French thing again. Used to love baking. Then I moved to a high altitude. You can't bake the same at a high altitude as you do at a low one. All my recipes that I had spent years perfecting were suddenly terrible. I would try to find high altitude recipes online, but they were always still for a few thousand feet lower than I was, so even on specifically high altitude recipes I'd have to adjust for the altitude, and even with a billion guides I just never was able to get the hang of it. It was worse than starting over from scratch, because at least when I first started I could follow a damn recipe, so I just quit. Maybe I'll get back into it whenever I move back closer to sea level. Theater. I used to love musicals like Heathers, Dear Evan Hansen, Hamilton, ECT. But the community is truly insane. Especially the Hamilton community. It's incredibly toxic, and many of my friends left me because they wanted better theater friends. The number of people who get offended when you admit that you don't like Hamilton is insane. It's just not my taste in music. I don't think it's bad. I just don't enjoy listening to it. I mean, people get defensive and offended when over another person not liking all sorts of things, but the Hamilton fans are some of the worst. I wanted to invest my time in archery, but the expense that was put into it was too high. I had to give it up. Try recurve or longbow shooting. It's pretty cheap and allows you to use cheaper arrows. The only downside is you are less accurate and are limited in distance. Even entry-level compound bows are quite cheap if you know where to look, so Archery and Bear make some good reasonably priced kit. I would recommend avoiding used stuff unless you know what to look for. I had to quit the hobby because the club I was part of decided they wanted to become more competition focused and mistreated/ghosted the members that were there for hunting/pleasure. I really want to restart, but I don't have the land/equipment to do so. World of Tanks. The producer of the game, Wargaming, started selling pay-to-win tanks that basically ruined the whole grinding experience part of the game for the regular tanks. Why use the regular ones when you can just use the pay-to-win tanks and get better rewards? When everyone started using those tanks I quickly lost interest. They also ruined, nerfed, an entire branch of tanks that I enjoyed playing. I'd played guitar for years as a teen. But between lack of accessibility to formal education and a bunch of shit from my friends who called it a white girl hobby I just lost interest. It's a shame no one told me about Sister Rosetta Thorpe back then. I feel I might have been inspired to keep at it knowing that a black woman basically invented playing electric guitar. Edit. I really appreciate a lot of the supportive replies. It makes me want to pick the instrument back up. That said, there was a shocking amount of vitriol and judgment towards my 12 to 17-year-old self. I get it, not all of you folded to peer pressure. A lot more saying see. Proof that black people are racist too. Those last two groups of people really need to stop replying, because you're just as bad as those bitches in high school. It's not a hobby, but I wish it was for me. Coding. I used to want to learn to code. Thinking wow I'd love to code and make cool games and make 10 figures as a kid. As I got older, I never got into coding because I learned that I didn't want to do it as a job. Deadlines and timelines and lines of codes for things I may or may not like, and then fixing the codes and all of the time it would take to do all of this kind of killed it for me. I might pursue small coding later, like Python for Raspberry systems or something, but I will never turn my hobby into a job. I used to do a lot of target shooting, but honestly the super pro gun people have ruined firearm ownership and most sports shooting. People used to have enough common sense to know when it was inappropriate to carry a gun, but now they've gone so insane that they are even advocating arming teachers. Currently pretty much anything gun related is filled with morons that think they are some kind of survivalist soldier. They buy crappy but expensive guns and useless accessories and stockpile ammo and supplies. They also delude themselves into thinking that they are capable of stopping a mass shooting. If only they were there. I'm all for self-defense, but anyone not in a war zone that thinks they need to carry a firearm everywhere they go probably shouldn't have one. After years and years of sewing gifts for children in my family and friends' kids, I finally launched an Etsy, then transitioned into again my own website. It was stressful, customers were frustrating, custom orders were fun, but could be problematic. Stock and supplies filled up our second bedroom in a small house. I had to be on my phone/computer/ig whenever I wasn't sewing. Collaborations were flaky. It wasn't worth the stress and long hours to make very little after an entire year plus of work. Shut my shop down. Gave most of my leftover stock away.